There's a massive cultural problem in European football when it comes to hiring and firing managers, particularly with the way fans clamor for it and have an involvement in this process. We're going to talk about that now, here on Pints and Punditry at Total FIFA Career Mode. Alright, so Jesse Marsch got fired by Leeds, and that's not what this video is about, but because it's the most timely example, it's what we're going to use as a reference for this discussion. The discussion I want to have is about the way European football clubs, particularly in the Premier League, go about hiring and firing managers, particularly with the frequency with which they do it, and the short leash that these managers have to have any sort of success, and what this does for team building. And the reason I want to talk about Jesse Marsch and Leeds is, there was a huge clamoring for him to be fired, and that is the inherent problem in European football with how this goes about it. And as soon as you start to get close to the drop, the fans start clamoring. You lose a couple of games, and yes, the loss against Nottingham was not good, but you start to clamor for the coaching change, and the pressure builds, and then the owners act. And that's a problem. The fans play far too big of a role, and obviously the fans all want to win, and they're trying to accomplish the best thing for their club, but it's counterproductive. It's actually going to have a negative effect. Every time you're calling for your manager to be fired in less than a year, you get yourself back on the hamster wheel, and you're never going to get off it. And you're going to just barely try to hang on and survive, and then you're going to be right back here next year. At some point, you've got to plant your flag in a coach and say, this is our guy, this is our system, ride or die. And if you get demoted, then you pick the wrong guy and you start over. But to just keep this revolving door every year and a half of a new coach, new system, new players, means you're never going to be better than just treading water. And that's part of the problem. And the fans are at least partially to blame. Jesse Marsch was there for less than a year. He came in mid-year, which is tough. It's tough to make an impact in the middle of a season, in a short season and a half season. You don't get a preseason to implement your strategies, your techniques. You don't have your players. You try to build your system with somebody else's players. This is difficult to do. So the amount of impact, the amount of difference you can make is going to be incremental. With Marsch, he has a certain style. He comes from that RB Leipzig family of clubs and with the super high energetic, high press. And listen, if you're hiring Marsch, you know what you're getting. You know that's what you're getting. We're not here to debate whether or not that's a good style for Leeds or for anybody else or for the U.S. men's national team. That's a different discussion. But you know what you're getting, right? So you have to give him the certain style of players to do that. He wasn't going to be able to implement that to the best of his ability with Bielsa's players in the middle of a season. So you almost have to discount that, and that's why you really shouldn't make these changes mid-season. That's not productive, other than when you get desperate to avoid relegation, and that's part of the problem. Anytime you're making moves out of desperation, you're going to run into trouble, and you're going to make moves that you otherwise may not have made. So he comes in mid-season, doesn't have his players, they survive the drop. Kudos to him. That was the goal in firing Bielsa. They loved Bielsa. Bielsa was a club legend. The only reason to get rid of him was for fear of the drop. So Marsch accomplished the first thing he was set out to do. He kept him in the Premier League. Now you give him the players he needs. Now, a lot has been made of, he's had the time, and he's gotten the investment. Well, no, he hasn't had the time. He got the rest of Bielsa's season and a half of this season that was interrupted by the World Cup. In what world is that time to prove yourself? In what world is that enough time to show what you can do? It's not. It's what you're saying by he's had the time is we're running out of patience. Okay, I'm going to translate for you. He has not had the time. He's had a stretch that's been interrupted by a couple of different things. The end of a season, the start of a new season, and a World Cup. In what world is that enough time to get things, quote, right? It's just not. What it is enough time for you to start to hit the panic button because you're afraid of relegation, right? So that's what's happening here. Leeds made the investment. That's the other argument. They invested in his players. No, they didn't. They were, I think, 16th or 17th in net spend this summer. Yes, they went out and got some players. They also sold Rafinha and Calvin Phillips, the two most talented players on that Leeds roster. That's not an investment. Now, was that going to happen anyway? Yeah, probably, and any manager is going to have to deal with that. But that's sort of the point here is, Leeds' wage bill is 17th in the Premier League. where do you expect them to be? And I've posted a poll on Twitter asking that very question, and the results are predictably unrealistic. Where do you expect this team to be when you're 17th in wages? 17th? Somewhere around there? Fighting for relegation? Yes, Leeds has invested, and if you look in the history of Leeds, it's probably more than Leeds has ever spent, right? This is the biggest investment that's ever been made in the club. Yeah, so is the rest of the Premier League. Look at the spending. It's off the charts, right? So the barometer has shifted. It's not enough to keep up. And then when you factor in the net spend and they're selling off Rafinha and Calvin Phillips, it's a negative net spend. They actually didn't invest in the team. They made money. They profited, right? So that's not investing in your club. So Leeds really is about where they ought to be. And so to expect Jesse Marsch to have done something differently in a shortened period of time with a World Cup in the middle is really unrealistic. And here's the fundamental problem is any coach, any good coach is going to have a real system, right? And they're going to want to run this top to bottom. The best clubs run their systems top to bottom. Man City with Pep, they've got their academy running the same style and they're looking for players of the same style. Klopp, same thing. It's an organization. When you are the manager of the Premier League team, you are the top of your organization. It's not just these 30 guys on a team and you're running practice. And so when you don't have any consistency and you zig into one strategy and zag into another one, there's no consistency across the board. Look at what's going on with Chelsea. They're spending just buckets of money, but what's their style? What's their play? It was Tuchel, and now it's Graham Potter. He apparently doesn't have much of a say in it. They still can't get a striker. So you can spend money till you're blue in the face, but if you don't have a cohesive strategy, it's not going to lead to anything, and that's going to ultimately be the problem with Chelsea. They'll outspend some of their problems, but they're not going to outspend all of them. With Leeds, now they're going to change an entirely different system. They're going to get a different manager who wants different players. Would he want Brendan Aronson? Would he want Weston McKennie? Does he want Tyler Adams? Not if they don't fit that system. Not every player fits every coach's system. So now you're going to be starting again, right? You're going to sell these players off, bring in new players. You end up in this constant revolving door of zigging and zagging with every new coach, and you never gain any traction. And all you're trying to do is avoid the drop. At some point, you have to lay claim and plant your flag in the ground on a particular coach and that coach's particular style and hope it works. And that's going to take more than 11 months. The big culprit here is promotion and relegation. And I'm a huge promotion relegation guy. I wish Major League Soccer had it. I think it's a wonderful part of European soccer, but it also is what leads to this sort of level of desperation and impatience. Leeds is fighting the drop, right? They're sitting in 17th. They are right up against relegation. And the difference between the Premier League and the Championship League, financially and in terms of keeping all these talented players they've acquired, is massive. It's a huge gulf. So, it's to do anything to avoid that. You look at Everton with Sean Dyche. You'll do anything to avoid getting relegated. So I get that and that level of desperation. Unfortunately, what that does is it leads to poor decision making. Bigger picture philosophically, I think this is a great prime example of one of the problems in European football, that fans play too big a role pressuring teams to make coaching changes, and the ownership groups are far too willing to go along with it and make those changes. What do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Do I not know what I'm talking about? Do I not understand European football? You tell me. Don't forget to subscribe below. Follow us on Twitter at TotalFIFACM. Like the video. And thanks for joining us here at Pints and Punditry on Total FIFA Career Mode.